The armory of the GSS Horizon's Edge smelled like metal and oil. Rows of weapons lined the walls, each one glowing with power indicators and digital displays. Plasma rifles hummed softly on their charging racks. Energy weapons blinked with ready lights. Everything looked advanced and deadly. Corporal Hana walked into the armory carrying a long object wrapped in worn cloth. She moved quietly, as she always did. The other soldiers barely noticed her enter. They were too busy checking their own weapons and talking about the upcoming mission. Hana unwrapped her rifle slowly. The cloth fell away to reveal dark wood and dull metal. The gun looked ancient compared to everything else in the room. It had no lights, no displays, no humming power cores. Just wood, metal, and simple mechanisms that clicked when she moved them. A loud laugh echoed through the armory. Captain Vexra, a tall alien with blue-black scales covering his body, pointed at Hana's rifle. His reptilian eyes gleamed with amusement. "What is that supposed to be?" Vexra asked, his voice filled with disbelief. He walked over and picked up the rifle with one clawed hand, holding it like it might break. "Is this some kind of joke?" Other soldiers gathered around. Sergeant Krell, an insect-like alien with 4 arms and a hard-shell body, clicked his mouth parts together. The sound meant he was laughing. "Does it even work?" Krell asked. "Our weapons fire 40,000 rounds every minute. That thing looks like it shoots 1 bullet at a time." "It does shoot 1 bullet at a time," Hana said quietly. She took the rifle back from Vexra and began checking it over, running her hands along the barrel. This made the aliens laugh even harder. Private Nexus, a being made of pure energy held in a vaguely human shape, flickered with what might have been laughter. "1 shot at a time? I can fire 8,000 shots before recharging. How many shots can you carry?" Hana pulled out a small leather pouch from her belt. She opened it to show 8 brass bullets nestled inside. "8," she said simply. The armory erupted with laughter. Even some of the human soldiers smiled and shook their heads. 8 bullets seemed ridiculous when everyone else carried enough ammunition for hours of continuous fighting. 8 bullets, Vexra repeated, still chuckling. "What will you do after the first 8 enemies? Throw the gun at them?" Hana didn't answer. She loaded the bullets into her rifle one by one. Each one clicked into place with a soft metallic sound. She worked with practiced movements, her fingers knowing exactly what to do. Commander Taman, a human officer with gray hair and tired eyes, walked into the armory. He saw the crowd gathered around Hana and immediately understood what was happening. He had seen this before. "Is there a problem here?" Taman asked, his voice calm but firm. Vexra gestured at Hana's rifle. "Commander, with respect, I must question the wisdom of bringing such primitive equipment on this mission. We are about to face 200 enemy soldiers in fortified positions. This human brings a weapon from your planet's museum and 8 bullets. Taman looked at Hana, who continued checking her rifle without looking up. "Corporal Hana doesn't miss," he said simply. "Everyone misses," Krell insisted. "It is impossible to hit every shot in real combat. The stress, the movement, the chaos. Even with our advanced targeting computers, we only achieve 80% accuracy." "Corporal Hana doesn't use a targeting computer," Taman said. "She uses her eyes and her brain." "And she doesn't miss," Vexra shook his head. "Commander, I have fought for 30 years. I have led hundreds of missions. Your species is brave, I will give you that. But you are new to this galaxy. You have only been part of the coalition for 15 years. We have been fighting wars for 10,000 years. Perhaps the corporal should stay on the ship and observe how professionals handle this mission." Young Private Jiwan, a human barely 20 years old, spoke up from the corner. "Captain Vexra, sir, I saw Corporal Hana qualify last month. She hit a target 1,000 meters away. In the wind, with just her eyes and that rifle." "Impressive for a primitive weapon," Vexra admitted. "But this is not target practice. This is war. We need firepower, not accuracy. We need weapons that can fill the air with death." Hana finally looked up from her rifle. Her eyes were dark and calm. "How many bullets did you fire on your last mission, Captain?" Vexra seemed surprised by the question. "I don't keep count. Perhaps 5,000 rounds. How many enemies did you hit?" Hana asked. The captain paused. The battle report showed 43 confirmed eliminations. 5,000 bullets for 43 hits, Hana said softly. "I would need 8 bullets for 43 hits. Maybe 9 if it was a bad day." The armory went quiet. Vexra's scales darkened slightly, which meant he was angry or embarrassed. "Bold words," he said. But words are easy. Let us see how you perform when real bullets fly at your head. Lieutenant Bora, another human officer, entered the armory carrying a data pad. Briefing starts in 10 minutes, she announced. All mission personnel to the briefing room. The soldiers began filing out. Hana stayed behind, continuing to check her rifle. She ran a cloth down the barrel, cleaning metal that was already clean. It was a ritual, something she did before every mission. Taman waited until the others left. They don't understand, he said to Hana. They will, Hana replied. She held up one of her bullets, examining it in the light. The brass casing gleamed. Or they won't, doesn't matter. It matters to me, Taman said. I know what you can do. I've seen it. But the others think we're primitives playing with toys. Hana loaded the 8 bullets into a magazine and slid it into her rifle. The action was smooth and practiced. Let them think what they want. The mission is what matters. In the briefing room, holographic displays showed Station Omicron 7 floating in space. The station was huge, a maze of corridors and chambers. Red dots marked enemy positions. There were a lot of red dots. Commander Taman stood at the front of the room. The separatist forces have taken control of Station Omicron 7. Intelligence reports approximately 200 enemy soldiers, well-armed and well-positioned. Our objective is to infiltrate the station, neutralize the command center, and disable the shield generators. He pointed at the hologram, showing their planned entry point. We breach here, move through the industrial sector, and push toward the central command. Expect heavy resistance, Vexra studied the display. My team will take point. We have the best armor and the heaviest weapons. The humans can follow behind and provide support. Negative, Taman said. We move as one unit. Everyone has a role. Even the one with 8 bullets? Krell asked, clicking his mandibles. Especially her. Taman said firmly. The briefing continued for another 30 minutes. They discussed entry points, communication protocols, and emergency extraction procedures. Hana listened quietly, her rifle resting across her knees. She memorized the station layout, noting corridors, sight lines, and possible enemy positions. After the briefing ended, the soldiers moved to the boarding pods. These were small craft designed to punch through a ship's hull and deploy troops inside. 24 elite soldiers would make the assault, including 5 humans. Hana strapped into her seat in the boarding pod. Around her, alien soldiers checked their weapons one last time. Plasma rifles whined as they powered up. Energy weapons glowed brighter. The pod filled with the hum of advanced technology. Hana's rifle made no sound. It just sat there, dark wood and dull metal looking out of place among all the glowing weapons. Last chance to get a real weapon, Nexus said to Hana. His energy form flickered in the dim light. I have a spare plasma pistol. At least you would have more than 8 shots. No, thank you, Hana said politely. The boarding pod's engines roared to life. Through the small window, Hana could see Station Omicron 7 growing larger. In a few minutes, they would breach the hull. In a few minutes, the real test would begin. Vexra checked his weapon display. Remember, everyone, stay in formation, watch your sectors, and try not to die. The soldiers acknowledged with various sounds and words. Hana said nothing. She simply closed her eyes and ran through the station layout in her mind, planning shots she might never take, calculating angles she might never need. The boarding pod slammed into the station's hull with tremendous force. Metal screamed against metal. Then the cutting charges fired, burning through the station's outer wall. Smoke filled the pod. Go, 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 Vexra shouted. The soldiers poured out of the boarding pod and into Station Omicron 7. The real mission had begun. Hana was the last one out, moving quietly behind the others, her ancient rifle ready in her hands. The aliens rushed forward with their glowing weapons. Hana followed at her own pace, calm and ready. She had 8 bullets. In her mind, that was more than enough. The interior of Station Omicron 7 was dark and cold. Emergency lights flickered along the walls, casting strange shadows. The air smelled like metal and electricity. The coalition soldiers moved through the corridors in formation, weapons ready, eyes scanning for danger. Vexra led the way, his scaled body moving with practiced precision. His rifle's sensors swept the area ahead, feeding information to a display on his helmet. Corridor clear, he reported. No heat signatures. No movement. Behind him, the other alien soldiers advanced with their weapons raised. Their equipment hummed and beeped softly, filling the silence with technological sounds. Krell's forearms each held a different weapon, covering multiple directions at once. Nexus phased partially through walls, checking rooms before the team entered them. The 5 humans moved more quietly. Commander Taman kept his plasma rifle low but ready. Lieutenant Bora monitored communications, her eyes on a small display attached to her wrist. Young Jiwan looked nervous, his finger near his trigger. Minho, the team medic, stayed in the middle of the formation, ready to help anyone who got hurt. Hana walked at the rear, her old rifle held comfortably in her hands. While the others watched their sensor displays and targeting computers, she watched the environment itself. She noticed the scorch marks on the walls from old battles. She saw the debris scattered on the floor. She observed how sound echoed differently in different corridors. They moved deeper into the station. The industrial sector was a maze of passages and chambers. Large pipes ran along the ceiling. Storage containers sat in corners. Every turn could hide an enemy. Still nothing on sensors, Vexra said. He sounded almost disappointed. Perhaps the enemy fled when they heard we were coming. Stay alert, Taman warned. Intelligence said 200 soldiers. They didn't just disappear. Krell clicked his mandibles. Maybe your intelligence was wrong. It would not be the first time humans made a mistake. They reached a major intersection where several corridors met. Vexra checked his sensors again, sweeping them across every direction. All clear, he announced. We should continue straight toward the command center. The team started across the intersection. They were halfway through when Hana stopped walking. Something felt wrong. The corridor ahead looked too perfect, too clear, too inviting. Wait, she said quietly. But her voice was too soft and the others were too far ahead. They didn't hear her. The trap sprung with devastating speed. The walls exploded with gunfire from hidden positions. Plasma bolts and solid rounds tore through the air from every direction. The enemy had concealed themselves perfectly, using some kind of sensor masking technology that made them invisible to the Coalition's advanced detection equipment. Nexus phased through a wall to flank the enemy, but they were ready for that too. A strange device activated, forcing his energy form to become solid. He materialized in the middle of enemy fire and fell, his form flickering weakly. Krell roared and charged forward, his forearms blazing with weapon fire. But the enemy positions were too well defended. Concentrated fire hammered his shields until they collapsed. He dove behind a large container, barely avoiding death. Vexra's shields flashed and sparked under sustained assault. Fall back, he shouted. It's an ambush. Fall back! But there was nowhere to fall back to. The enemy had closed off their retreat. The Coalition soldiers were trapped in a perfect kill zone, caught in a 3-dimensional crossfire with no good cover and no way out. In the first minute, 16 of the 24 soldiers fell. Some were dead. Others were badly wounded, screaming for help that couldn't reach them. The 8 survivors pressed themselves behind whatever cover they could find, but it wasn't enough. Enemy fire tore through their positions from elevated nests and flanking angles. We're pinned down, Vexra snarled into his communicator, requesting immediate extraction. We cannot advance and we cannot retreat. Taman crouched behind a blown-out wall panel, assessing the situation. It was bad. Worse than bad. The enemy had outplayed them completely. They had let the Coalition team walk right into a trap, and now they were systematically destroying them. We need to break through or we all die here, Taman said. Bora tried to return fire, but her shots went wide, hitting walls and ceiling. The enemy was too well positioned. Every time someone exposed themselves to shoot, concentrated fire forced them back into cover. Jiwan was shaking, his face pale. We're going to die, he whispered. We're all going to die. Minho was trying to reach one of the wounded soldiers, but enemy fire cut him off. I can't get to them, he shouted. They're dying and I can't reach them. The alien soldiers with their advanced weapons found themselves helpless. Their plasma rifles could fire thousands of rounds per minute, but it didn't matter if they couldn't aim. Their energy weapons could punch through steel walls, but it didn't matter if the enemy was positioned where they couldn't be hit. Vexra tried to use his rifle's smart targeting system, but the enemy kept moving, using the station's structure to their advantage. This is impossible, he growled. They have every angle covered. Every position is fortified. We can't hit them and they're shredding us. Hana remained calm. While the others panicked and fired wildly, she observed. She studied the enemy positions, noting where the fire came from, how they moved, how they coordinated. She saw approximately 40 enemy soldiers arranged in a layered defense that would stop any conventional assault. But she also saw the weaknesses. She unslung her rifle and found a small gap in the debris. The gap was barely wide enough to see through, but it gave her a sight line down the corridor. She could see one of the elevated nests where an enemy commander was directing the ambush. "What are you doing?" Vexra demanded. "You can't help with that antique." "We need heavy firepower!" Hana didn't answer. She chambered around. The mechanical sound of the bolt action was loud even over the plasma fire. Click-clack. The simple sound somehow cut through all the chaos. She pressed the rifle's wooden stock against her shoulder. She looked through the iron sights, just 2 pieces of metal that helped her aim. No computer. No display. No targeting assistance. Just her eyes and her judgment. She controlled her breathing. In, out, in, out. She felt her heartbeat slow. The chaos around her faded away. There was only the target, the distance, the angle. She squeezed the trigger. The rifle fired with a sharp crack that echoed like thunder in the metal corridor. The sound was different from the whine of plasma weapons or the buzz of energy guns. It was sharp, final, definitive. 200 meters down the corridor, the enemy commander jerked and fell from his elevated nest. He had been positioned behind cover that should have protected him completely. But Hana's bullet had found the one angle, the one gap, the one perfect shot. The enemy forces faltered. For just a moment they stopped shooting, confused. How had their commander been killed? He had been safe. Their sensors hadn't detected any energy weapons firing in his direction. Hana chambered another round. Click-clack. The sound was steady, unhurried. She adjusted her aim slightly, accounting for a different angle and distance. The second shot rang out. Another enemy soldier fell. This one had been coordinating the ambush from behind multiple layers of cover. He should have been impossible to hit. But Hana's bullet found him anyway, traveling through a narrow gap between 2 structural supports. The coalition soldiers stared at her in shock. Krell's mandibles hung open. "How?" he whispered. Vexra looked at Hana, then at his own advanced rifle with its glowing displays and targeting computers. He had fired hundreds of rounds and hit nothing. She had fired 2 shots and killed 2 targets that should have been impossible to hit. "Everyone give her covering fire when she shoots," Taemin ordered. "Don't waste your shots. Wait for her to fire, then shoot toward where her bullet came from. Make the enemy keep their heads down." The alien soldiers didn't fully understand, but they were desperate. They agreed. Hana studied the battlefield again. She wasn't looking at soldiers now. She was looking at the station itself. She saw a structural beam that was already damaged from the fighting. 3 enemy soldiers were using it as cover. She saw an ammunition cache carelessly positioned near an enemy heavy weapons team. She saw a vulnerable power conduit feeding the enemy's portable shield generator. She wasn't just shooting at people. She was looking for ways to dismantle the entire enemy defensive structure. Third shot. She aimed at the damaged structural beam. Her bullet struck it precisely where the metal was weakest. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the beam groaned, twisted, and collapsed. 3 enemy soldiers and part of the ceiling came down on top of them. The enemy's left flank dissolved into chaos. She shot the building, Bora whispered in amazement. Fourth shot. The ammunition cache. The bullet punched through the container. There was a brief pause, then the cache exploded in a brilliant fireball. 7 enemy soldiers and their heavy weapons position simply ceased to exist. Vexra's eyes widened. She's not just killing enemies. She's destroying their entire defensive position. Krell watched in awe. Our weapons fire faster. They hit harder. But they're designed for direct combat. That rifle is a precision tool. Jiwan, the young human, managed a nervous smile despite the danger. Corporal Hana was a competitive shooter before joining the military. Hana knelt in front of the maintenance panel, studying it carefully. The panel was small, maybe the size of her hand. Behind it, deep inside the wall, she could see a glimpse of the blast door's locking mechanism. It was far away, hidden behind pipes and structural supports. The other soldiers watched her in silence. They had seen her do impossible things already, but this seemed too much even for her. The target was tiny and buried inside the wall. The bullet would have to travel through the panel, navigate around obstacles, and hit exactly the right spot. "There's no way," Vexra said quietly. "Even if you could see the target clearly, which you can't, The bullet would have to curve around that support strut. Bullets don't curve. They bounce, Hana said. She was calculating angles in her head, visualizing the path her bullet would need to take. If they hit the right surface at the right angle, they bounce in predictable ways. She positioned herself at a specific angle to the panel. Not straight on, but slightly to the left. She adjusted her stance several times, moving just inches each time until she was satisfied. Taman knelt beside her. No pressure, Corporal. Just all our lives depending on this. Hana allowed herself a small smile. Standard mission, sir. She chambered the 7th round. Click-clack. The sound was steady and sure. She had complete confidence in her rifle. It had never failed her. Never jammed, never misfired. It was simple and reliable. Old, yes. Primitive, maybe. But it worked. She pressed her cheek against the stock. Through the iron sights, she could barely see her target. Most of the locking mechanism was hidden. But she could see one part of it, one small section that, if hit precisely, would release the door. She breathed in slowly. Held it. In her mind, she traced the bullet's path. Through the panel. Into the wall. Off the interior surface at a 23-degree angle. Around the support strut. Into the locking mechanism. She squeezed the trigger, the rifle cracked. The bullet disappeared into the panel. Everyone held their breath. For 3 seconds, nothing happened. 3 long seconds where doubt crept in. Had she missed? Was it impossible after all? Then the blast door's locking mechanism sparked and groaned. Smoke poured from the maintenance panel. The massive door shuddered and began to slide open. Impossible, Vexra breathed. That was impossible. That was physics, Hana corrected quietly. She chambered her 8th and final round. The blast door opened fully, revealing the command center beyond. But the Coalition's problems weren't over. 12 elite enemy soldiers waited inside, positioned behind fortified barriers. They had been expecting an assault and were ready. The enemy commander's voice came over the loudspeaker. He sounded confident, almost amused. You've fought well. Better than I expected. But this is where it ends. Surrender now and I'll allow your wounded to receive medical treatment. Taman quickly assessed their situation. They had 7 soldiers left. Vexra was out of ammunition. Krell's weapons were melted from overheating. Bora's rifle was damaged and barely functional. Minyo was a medic, not a fighter. Jiwan had a pistol with maybe 6 shots remaining. And Hana had 1 bullet. Options? Vexra asked quietly. We could surrender, Bora suggested. The wounded need help. They'll execute us, Krell said. The separatists don't take prisoners. It's a trap. Jiwan looked terrified. His hand shook as he gripped his pistol. We can't fight 12 soldiers with what we have. It's suicide. Everyone looked at Hana. She stood there calmly, her rifle held loosely in her hands. 1 bullet remaining. 12 enemies in fortified positions. She didn't enter the command center. Instead, she positioned herself in the corridor, where she could see through the open blast door at an extreme angle. Her view of the room was limited. She could barely see inside. What's your plan, Corporal? Taman asked. Hana studied the ceiling of the command center. She couldn't see much of it from her angle, but she could see one specific panel. It was part of the station's emergency systems. Do you trust me, Commander? She asked. Taman had seen her work for 2 years. He had watched her qualify with impossible shots. He had seen her perform under pressure. Always, he said, when I fire, push off the ground and glide into the room. Don't run. Glide, like swimming through water. Vexra didn't understand. What are you talking about? Hana chambered her final round. The 8th bullet. Click-clack. Be ready. Inside the command center, the enemy commander watched his sensors. They're not surrendering. Prepare to fire. As soon as someone enters that doorway, cut them down. Hana aimed at the ceiling panel. She wasn't aiming at a person. She wasn't aiming at a weapon or ammunition. She was aiming at the station's gravity control system. The shot had to be perfect. The panel was small and partially hidden. She could barely see it from her angle. But if she hit the emergency manual override, it would shut down the gravity generators instantly. She controlled her breathing one last time. This was it. Her 8th bullet. Her last chance. She fired. The bullet flew through the air, entered the command center, and struck the ceiling panel precisely where the emergency override was located. There was a brief flash of sparks. Then the gravity disappeared. The enemy soldiers suddenly floated up from their positions, disoriented and confused. Their weapons drifted away from their aim points. They flailed in the air, trying to adjust to zero gravity, but the coalition soldiers had been warned. They pushed off from the ground and glided into the command center, moving with purpose while the enemy panicked. In zero gravity, the coalition's close combat training gave them the advantage. They weren't better armed, they weren't more numerous, but they knew how to fight without gravity, and the enemy didn't. Taman grabbed a floating enemy soldier and used him as a shield. Vexra, despite having no ammunition, used his physical strength to disable two opponents. Krell's forearms were perfect for zero-gravity combat, letting him control his movement while fighting. Even Jiwan, terrified as he was, managed to disarm an enemy soldier. The battle lasted 90 seconds. When it was over, all 12 enemy soldiers were subdued. The coalition had won. Gravity returned with a heavy thud. Everyone fell to the floor, exhausted and battered. The enemy commander lay unconscious, his weapon out of reach. Hana walked into the command center, her rifle held loosely. She ejected the empty magazine. 8 shots. All 8 had changed the course of the battle. Vexra sat on the floor, breathing heavily. He looked at Hana with something like awe in his reptilian eyes. He picked up one of her spent shell casings from the floor. It was still warm. "I don't understand," he said quietly. "Our weapons are superior in every way. Firing rate, range, power consumption, targeting assistance, everything." Taman helped Bora to her feet. "Your weapons are designed to make average soldiers effective. Her weapon is designed to make an expert unstoppable." Krell approached Hana slowly. His mandibles clicked, but not in mockery this time. In respect. "You never missed," he observed. 8 shots. 8 hits. But you weren't just hitting targets. You were conducting a battle like a piece of music. Every shot changed everything. Hana began cleaning her rifle, running a cloth down the barrel. It was a ritual, something she always did after firing. "It's not about the weapon," she said quietly. "It's about understanding physics, angles, timing, and patience." She looked up at the alien soldiers gathered around her. They weren't laughing anymore. They weren't mocking. They were listening. "Your weapons let you fire without thinking," Hana continued. "You point and pull the trigger and the computer does everything else. This rifle makes me think about every single shot. Where will it go? What will it hit? What will happen next?" Naxus, recovered enough to stand, flickered over to them. His energy form was weak but stable. "How did you train for this? How does anyone become this skilled?" Hana smiled softly. "Practice. Every day. For years. I started shooting when I was 8 years old. That was 18 years ago. 18 years of practice. Maybe 50,000 shots. Maybe more." She held up her rifle, showing them the worn wood and used metal. "This rifle is 70 years old. It belonged to my grandfather. He taught me to shoot. He taught me that one perfect shot is worth more than 1,000 wasted bullets." Jiwan sat down next to her, his fear replaced by admiration. "You make it look easy." "It's not easy," Hana said. "It's the hardest thing I've ever learned. Every shot requires complete concentration. I have to calculate distance, wind, movement, angles. I have to control my breathing, my heartbeat, my muscles. One small mistake and I miss." "But you didn't miss," Bora pointed out. "Not once. Not today," Hana agreed. "But I've missed plenty of times in practice. Thousands of times. That's how you learn. You miss, you adjust, you try again." Minho was treating the wounded, but he paused to listen. "The difference between you and them," he said, gesturing at the alien soldiers, "is that they rely on their weapons. You rely on yourself." Vexra stood slowly, his scales darkening with what might have been shame. "I mocked you," he said to Hana. "I called your weapon primitive. I called you inexperienced. I was wrong." Hana looked at him calmly. "You weren't wrong about the weapon. It is primitive, it is old, but old doesn't mean useless. Sometimes the old ways work better than the new ways." She stood and slung her rifle over her shoulder. "We should secure the command center and call for evacuation. The mission is complete," as the soldiers moved to follow orders. The recovery ships arrived 2 hours later. Medical teams rushed into Station Omicron 7, treating the wounded and evacuating the dead. The mission had succeeded, but the cost had been heavy. 16 soldiers had fallen in the ambush. Many more were injured. Hana sat quietly in a corner of the command center while medics worked around her. She had disassembled her rifle and was cleaning each piece carefully. Her hands moved with practiced precision, wiping away powder residue and checking for any damage. A young medic approached her. "Ma'am, are you injured?" You should let me check you over. I'm fine, Hana said softly. Check the others first. The medic nodded and moved on. Hana continued her work. This was her ritual after every mission. Clean the weapon. Check every part. Make sure it was ready for next time. Her grandfather had taught her this. A weapon that wasn't maintained was a weapon that would fail when you needed it most. Across the room, Vexra was giving his report to the ship's captain over a communicator. His voice was formal and precise. Mission accomplished. Command center secured. Enemy forces neutralized. Casualties were heavy. 16 dead, 7 wounded. The captain's voice crackled through the speaker. Understood. What caused such heavy casualties? Vexra paused. His scales darkened slightly. We walked into an ambush. Their sensor masking technology defeated our detection equipment. They had us in a perfect kill zone. How did you break through? Another pause. Vexra looked at Hana, who was reassembling her rifle. Corporal Hana, the human sniper, she changed everything. 3 days later, the GSS Horizon's Edge held a formal debriefing. All senior officers gathered in the main conference room. Holographic displays showed the mission data, casualty reports, and tactical analysis. Vexra stood before the assembled officers. His scales were their normal blue-black color, but he stood stiffly, as if uncomfortable. The mission succeeded due to Corporal Hana's intervention, he reported. His voice was clear, but held a note of something that might have been humility. My initial assessment of Earth's military capabilities was incorrect. He activated the holographic display. Helmet camera footage began to play. The officers watched in silence as the ambush unfolded. They saw the coalition forces get pinned down. They saw soldiers falling under enemy fire. Then they saw Hana's shots. The first shot dropping the enemy commander. The second eliminating the coordinator. The third collapsing the structural beam. The fourth igniting the ammunition cache. The fifth using a calculated ricochet to hit an impossible target. The sixth opening the blast door. The seventh penetrating deep into the wall. The eighth shutting down the gravity system. When the footage ended, the conference room was silent. Admiral Cora, a tall Luminar officer whose energy form glowed bright blue, leaned forward. This was all calculated in real time, without computer assistance? Correct, Taman said. He had been invited to the debriefing to provide context. Corporal Hana uses only her training and experience. No targeting computers, no rangefinders, no ballistic calculators. A Saurian general named Rax studied the data. Her weapon fires at approximately 800 meters per second. Our plasma weapons fire at 40,000 meters per second. Yet her shots were more effective. How is this possible? Speed isn't everything, Taman explained. Her bullets are solid projectiles. They don't dissipate like plasma. They don't scatter like energy beams. They travel in predictable arcs that she can calculate. And because each shot requires so much thought and preparation, she makes every single one count. Admiral Cora replayed the section where Hana shot the structural beam. She weaponized the environment itself. I've never seen this tactic before. Humans have been fighting wars with ballistic weapons for over 1,000 years, Taman said. We've learned to think about bullets in ways that go beyond simple targeting. We understand ricochet angles, penetration depths, structural weak points. When you fire 40,000 rounds per minute, you don't think about each bullet. When you have 8 bullets, you think about every single one. The officers discussed the footage for another hour. Some were impressed. Others were skeptical. But none could deny the results. 8 bullets had turned certain defeat into victory. Back in the ship's crew quarters, word of Hana's performance spread quickly. Soldiers who hadn't been on the mission heard the stories from those who had. The tales grew with each telling, but the core truth remained the same. The human with the old rifle had saved them all. Nexus found Hana in the ship's small observation deck. She was sitting alone, looking out at the stars. Her rifle lay across her lap. May I join you? Nexus asked. His energy form flickered politely. Of course, Hana said. Nexus settled into a shape that approximated sitting. I wanted to thank you. When the phase disruptors forced me solid, I thought I was dead, but your shots created enough chaos for the medics to reach me. You're welcome, Hana said simply. I've been thinking about what you said. Nexus continued. About practice. About discipline. I've been a soldier for 12 years, but I've never practiced the way you described. I just relied on my natural abilities and my weapons. Hana nodded. That works until you face someone who has both ability and practice. Will you teach me? Nexus asked. Not with your weapon. I'm energy-based. I can't hold physical objects. But the principles, the patience, the thinking. Hana looked at him surprised. You want me to teach you? You saved my life, Nexus said. More than that, you showed me something I'd never considered. That discipline and skill can overcome any technological advantage. I want to learn that. Over the next week, more soldiers approached Hana with similar requests. Krell wanted to understand her tactical thinking. Bora wanted to learn how to calculate angles without a computer. Even Vexra, proud as he was, asked her to explain how she had known the structural beam would collapse. Hana answered their questions patiently. She explained physics principles. She demonstrated how to calculate bullet drop over distance. She showed them how to spot structural weaknesses. She taught them that shooting wasn't just about pointing a weapon and pulling a trigger. One evening, Commander Taman found her in the armory. She was helping G1 learn proper rifle maintenance. You've become popular, Taman observed with a smile. They're curious, Hana said. Curiosity is good. It means they're willing to learn. Admiral Cora wants to see you tomorrow, Taman said. Formal meeting. You should wear your dress uniform. Hana looked up, concerned. Did I do something wrong? On the contrary, Taman said. I think you did something very right. The next day, Hana stood in Admiral Cora's office. She wore her dress uniform, freshly pressed with her few medals displayed. She felt uncomfortable in the formal clothes. She preferred her combat gear. Admiral Cora studied her for a long moment. The Luminar's energy form swirled in patterns that suggested deep thought. Corporal Hana, the Admiral said finally. I've reviewed the mission reports. I've watched the footage. I've read the statements from every survivor. Do you know what they all say?
No, sir, Hana said. They say you saved their lives.
They say you performed miracles with that antique weapon. They say you turned certain death into victory. The Admiral's form brightened. They say you're the reason any of them came home. Hana didn't know what to say. She just stood at attention, waiting. The Coalition awards the Star of Merit to soldiers who display exceptional valor and tactical brilliance, the Admiral continued. It's one of our highest honors. In 15 years, only 3 humans have received it. The Admiral picked up a small case from the desk and opened it. Inside was a medal, beautiful and intricate, glowing with its own light. You're the 4th, the Admiral said. The ceremony was held on the main deck. The entire crew assembled to watch.
Hana stood at attention while Admiral Cora pinned the medal to her uniform. For exceptional valor,
Tactical brilliance, and for saving the lives of your fellow soldiers, the Admiral announced. I hereby award Corporal Hana the Coalition Star of Merit. The crew applauded. It was traditional and formal. But then something unexpected happened. Vexra stepped forward. He removed a badge from his own uniform. It was a Saurian military decoration, earned through decades of service. Such badges were deeply personal, never given away lightly. Among my people, Vexra said, his voice carrying across the deck. We give this only to warriors we would trust with our lives, to those we would follow into any battle. He offered the badge to Hana. I would be honored if you would accept this. Hana took the badge carefully. She understood what it meant. It was more than a decoration. It was an apology and an acknowledgement. I will carry it with pride, Captain. Krell stepped forward next. He offered his own warrior mark, a chitin decoration earned in brutal combat. Then Nexus offered a luminar light crystal, a symbol of respect among his people. One by one, the alien soldiers she had saved offered their own tokens. By the time the ceremony ended, Hana held a collection of honors from a dozen different species. That evening, she sat in her quarters, looking at the medals and tokens spread across her desk. Next to them were her 8 spent shell casings from Station Omicron 7. She had kept them all. A knock at the door. G1 entered, looking nervous. Corporal, I was wondering, could you teach me? Not just the shooting, but how to think like you do, how to see what others miss. Hana looked at the young private. 3 weeks after Station Omicron 7, the GSS Horizon's Edge looked different. The ship's training deck had been modified to include a long-range shooting course. Targets were set up at various distances, from 50 meters to 500 meters. Some targets were stationary. Others moved. Some were hidden behind obstacles that required calculated shots to hit. Hana stood before a class of 20 soldiers. 10 were human. 10 were from different alien species. All were volunteers. All wanted to learn. This is not about the weapon, Hana began, her voice quiet but clear. This is about discipline, patience, understanding that sometimes one perfect shot is worth more than 1,000 wasted ones. The students listened carefully. Among them were soldiers who had once mocked her. Now they took notes and hung on her every word. Jiwon stood beside her as an assistant instructor. In 3 weeks, he had learned the basics. He could hit a target at 200 meters consistently now. Not perfect, but improving every day. Before we touch the rifles, Hana continued, we need to understand physics. A bullet doesn't travel in a straight line. Gravity pulls it down. Wind pushes it sideways. Distance reduces its speed. You must calculate all these factors in your head. A chitin soldier named Rax raised one of his 4 arms. Question. Our weapons don't require these calculations. The computer does everything. Why would we use a weapon that requires so much work? It was a fair question, one that Hana had expected. What happens when your computer fails? She asked. What happens when the enemy has jamming equipment? What happens when your power cell dies in the middle of a battle? Rax clicked his mandibles, thinking. Then the weapon is useless. Hana picked up her rifle. This weapon has no computer, no power cell, no electronics that can be jammed. In the worst conditions imaginable, it will still fire. It will never fail me because there's nothing to fail except me. She handed the rifle to Rax. He held it awkwardly with 2 of his arms. It's heavy. Weight provides stability, Hana explained. It absorbs recoil. When you fire, the weapon doesn't jump as much. This helps you aim the next shot faster. Bora, who was attending the class on her day off, raised her hand. How long did it take you to become this skilled? Hana considered the question. I started shooting when I was 8 years old. My grandfather taught me. By the time I was 12, I could hit targets at 300 meters. By 15, 500 meters. By 18, I could hit moving targets in the wind. I'm 26 now, so 18 years of constant practice. The class absorbed this information. 18 years. That was longer than some of them had been alive. But you don't need 18 years to become useful, Hana added. You need 18 years to become expert. You can learn the basics in a few months, become competent in a year, become skilled in 3 years. But to truly master it, that takes a lifetime. She demonstrated proper stance, showing them how to position their feet, how to hold the rifle, how to control their breathing. The students copied her movements, learning the fundamentals. Bexra watched from the observation gallery above the training deck. He had come to watch Hana's classes often. He never participated, but he always observed. Commander Taemin joined him. She's a natural teacher. She has patience, Bexra agreed. More patience than I have ever seen. She explains the same thing 10 times if needed, never getting frustrated. That's because she remembers learning, Taemin said. She remembers how hard it was, how many times she failed before she succeeded. On the training deck below, Hana was helping a Luminar soldier named Pax understand how to aim without having a physical body. Pax was energy-based like Nexus. He couldn't hold a rifle normally. You can manipulate energy fields, correct? Hana asked. Yes, Pax said, his form flickering. I can shape energy into basic forms. Then shape it into a rifle, Hana suggested. Make the weight feel right. Make the trigger resistance feel right. The principles are the same whether the weapon is metal or energy. You still need to aim. You still need to calculate the trajectory, Pax concentrated. His energy form shifted and changed. A shape appeared in his hands, glowing with soft light. It looked roughly like Hana's rifle. Good, Hana said. Now let's work on your stance. The classes continued every day. Some students learned quickly. Others struggled. But Hana never gave up on anyone. She worked with each student individually, finding ways to explain concepts that made sense to them. 1 month after the classes began, Hana organized a qualification test. Each student would fire at targets at various ranges. They would be scored on accuracy, not speed. The ship's crew gathered to watch. It had become a popular event. Even Admiral Korra attended, interested to see the results of Hana's teaching. Jiwon went first. He was nervous, his hands shaking slightly as he loaded his rifle. But he remembered Hana's lessons. Control your breathing. Steady your heartbeat. Think about each shot. He fired at a target 100 meters away. Hit. 200 meters. Hit. 300 meters. Hit. 5 out of 5 shots found their marks. The crowd applauded. Ji-won grinned, proud of himself. Hana nodded approvingly. Rax went next. His forearms made handling the rifle awkward, but he had practiced holding it with just 2 arms, using the others for stability. He hit 4 out of 5 targets. Not perfect, but impressive for someone who had been training for only a month. One by one, the students demonstrated what they had learned. Not all of them passed. Some hit only 2 targets out of 5, but they had all improved dramatically from when they started. When the qualification ended, Hana addressed her students. Some of you passed. Some didn't, but all of you learned something important. You learned that skill takes time, that practice matters, that discipline can achieve things that technology alone cannot. She held up her rifle. This weapon is over 70 years old. By galactic standards, it's ancient, primitive, obsolete. But in skilled hands, it can accomplish things that modern weapons cannot. Remember that. The tool is only as good as the person using it. That evening, the ship's mess hall was busy with soldiers discussing the qualification. Hana sat at a table with Taemin, Bora, and Minho, eating quietly. Nexus approached their table, his energy form flickering with what might have been excitement. "Corporal Hana, I have a request." "What is it?" Hana asked. "I want to organize an advanced class," Nexus said, "for those who pass the basic qualification. More complex shooting, moving targets, long-range shots. Will you teach it?" Hana looked at Taemin. "Sir, do I have permission?" Taemin smiled. "I think it's an excellent idea. The Admiral will approve it. Your training program has been very successful." And it had been successful. Soldiers who had once relied entirely on their weapons targeting computers were now learning to aim manually. They were learning to think about trajectory and wind and distance. They were becoming better soldiers. 2 months after Station Omicron 7, the Horizon's Edge received a new mission. A separatist base had been located on a remote moon. Intelligence suggested heavy defenses. The assault would be dangerous. When the mission roster was posted, Hana's name was on it. So were the names of 10 students from her training classes, including Ji-won and Rax. The night before the mission, Hana sat in the armory cleaning her rifle. Vexra entered carrying his own weapon. He sat down across from her. "May I speak freely?" he asked. "Always," Hana said. "I was wrong about you," Vexra said. "I was wrong about humans. I was wrong about everything." He paused, his scales darkening with emotion. "I have been a soldier for 30 years. I thought I knew everything about warfare, but you taught me that I knew nothing about patience, nothing about discipline, nothing about true skill." Hana continued cleaning her rifle. "You're a good soldier, Captain. You've proven yourself in battle many times. But I relied on my equipment," Vexra said. "On my weapons, my armor, my technology. I never thought about what would happen if all that technology failed. You showed me that the most important weapon is the mind." He placed something on the table between them. It was one of Hana's spent shell casings from Station Omicron 7. "I kept this. I look at it every day to remind myself that advanced technology doesn't make a good soldier. Training makes a good soldier. Practice makes a good soldier. Discipline makes a good soldier." Hana picked up the casing and examined it. "You can keep it," she said, "but remember what it really represents. Not one successful shot, but 10,000 practice shots that came before it." The mission to the Separatist moon went well. The coalition forces encountered heavy resistance, but they were prepared. The soldiers who had trained with Hana used their skills effectively. When their targeting computers were jammed by enemy equipment, they aimed manually. When their advanced weapons overheated, they controlled their fire instead of wasting ammunition. Ji-won, positioned on a ridge overlooking the base, spotted an enemy commander coordinating the defense. The target was 400 meters away, partially hidden behind cover. His targeting computer was offline due to jamming. He remembered Hana's lessons. Calculate the distance. Account for wind. Control your breathing. Think about the shot he fired. The enemy commander fell. The Separatist defense began to collapse. "Nice shot." Hana's voice came over the communicator. She was positioned elsewhere, providing overwatch for the assault team. "Thank you, Corporal," Ji-won replied. "I had a good teacher."